So I was at the Florida Youth Soccer Association AGM 2023, and it was a complete and utter shit show. Pardon my French, but I need to tell you that. The first day, which was, well, I guess it's really day 2. Saturday was actually decent, not too bad. And I came in probing for questions, right? Because that's my state governing body. FYSA is the state governing body. Then we had a day on Sunday, and this was the annual general meeting. And I'm like, okay, hopefully we're gonna get some stuff about development, which I'm gonna get to in a second. But I want to talk about Saturday. So there's some decent stuff going on, some good topics of discussion and whatnot. But I come into a player development discussion, and I said, listen, I have a question. What is FYSA going to do about kickball? What is the plan? Is there a plan about kickball? Are we going to do something to stop this? And what? And they're like, well, it's on the coaches. And there's not a lot we can do because it's through U.S. Soccer directly, and it's the mantra and mandate set by U.S. Soccer. So then I asked the question, are you telling me that U.S. Soccer doesn't care about grassroots? And they're like, no, they do, and it just kind of gave me the ring around about it. And I'm like, look, okay, cool, whatever. And I'm like, look, you guys got to understand, I'm an owner, I'm a director, and I'm a coach of one organization. I cover all 3 roles. And what's happening is a huge problem, because you might have the 1% of teams that are the top level teams playing football in a decent way. Okay, they're playing football. But the rest of the country, or at least from the state perspective, the grassroots is what I'll call it, the 99%, they're playing kickball. And there's no other way to look at it. You have parents on the sideline, you have coaches on the sideline, they're all screaming the same 3 words or phrases. Kick it, boot it, and send it. The 3 famous words or infamous words about youth soccer that really sets the status quo. And there was no answer. And I even had one of the main directors of coaching of FYSA come up to me afterwards. He's like, man, I wish I could give you a better answer. It's out of our hands. And I'm like, if you guys just did a couple of rule changes, everything would change. He's like, oh, well, we have to follow the mantra of U.S. Soccer. And I talked to a different person, very good, knowledgeable guy, former director of one of the biggest academies here, and now he works as a professional scout. Anyways, talking to him, and he's like, the staff at U.S. Soccer don't know what's happening at grassroots. And I'm like, bingo, that's the problem. They completely ignore the situation that's happening at grassroots. They don't pay attention to it. They don't care because fact is, it's true, the 1% of players are getting better. That's true. The level's higher. No question about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The 1% of players are getting better. They're progressively getting better. Fine. But that doesn't solve the crisis that I'm seeing, which is the other 99%. So you have the 1% over here, and then the rest of the country this way, or at least the state of Florida. And I'm sure it's every other country, or state, sorry. And we're just ignoring these facts. And it's like, if they're not going to pay attention to it, who is? Because the grassroots is not good enough. I mean, if we ultimately change the structure of grassroots where kickball was no longer allowed to be played, don't you think we'd have more 1%? So instead of being 1%, it'd be like 10%? Or like, I guess it'd really be here on my screen, right? 1 to 10%, and then the rest, right? Wouldn't that be a better play? But the problem is there's too much money involved. And money, the corruption about it, is what's brought this problem, and it's really a pandemic, or epidemic, whatever word you want to use to describe it. It's terrible. And this next point will kind of summarize it all. So they had the annual general meeting the next day, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have good discussion about youth development and structure and whatnot. First guy comes up, president. He's gung-ho. He's ready to go. He's like, look, when are you clubs going to start doing the right thing? I'm tired of talking about how expensive it is, and we need your support. And who has a plan? Nobody raised their hand. Nobody has a plan because nobody's going to charge less, which I'll get into in a second. But the point is, we have this one thing, this rant for, I guess it was like 2 minutes, right? Minute, 30 seconds, 2 minutes. And, it's okay. I understand what he's trying to do. It's fine. But I wanted to go ask the question. I didn't, and I probably should have. Well, you guys have leagues. You guys have programs like ODP. Are they free and or cheap? And in my opinion, it's not. Like, if you want to go to ODP, they have their district pool or whatever they call it, their tryout process. It's $85 to try out. Why is there an $85 fee to try out for ODP? But then you're going to come complain about things costing too much. And then if you make the state pool, each player has to pay $190. That's not feasible for most people on top of their club dues and things already. So like, I can appreciate you coming to complain about the cost of things, but just from an ODP perspective, I already have to shell out almost $300 for like 6 training sessions, 7, maybe 10 at most. I got to pay you almost $300 for 10 training sessions when there's hundreds of other kids coming. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't add up to the conversation that we're having about the cost. So that was the first part. The second part then tailors to the entire conversation during the annual general board meeting, or meeting, whatever you want to call it, was just political. It was a nightmare, bro, like a complete and utter nightmare. And it made me truly realize what's actually happening in this country and why we can't develop shit, why we suck at developing players internally, and they all have to leave to get to the highest level. Because there was no conversation about youth development. It was about this board member and these bylaws and these changes and this stuff. None of it had to do with the game, the ball, the players. Well, there was one. I'm sorry. There was one thing that had to do with players, and that particular part was, players can't play more than 1 game a day. Sorry, they can't play more than 2 games in a day for one team. And I'm like, we're arguing about how many games a kid can play in a day? Like, that's what we're talking about? When there's 500 other problems in just the state of Florida alone about development, processes, games, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is what we're talking about? Like, what I noticed is it's just become a complete political nightmare. And it's screwing the entire system. Like, the director came out on Saturday and he's like, look, we need you guys to support to change these bylaws and do these things. And I'm like, are you going to tell us what the bylaws are? And then when they're running through them, they say, okay, here are the changes. You can see them in red. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, cool. Let's vote. I mean, that was almost what it was. And I'm like, can you let us read it? They're like, oh, do you need somebody to read it? No, I can read it, but can you let me actually read it and then process it if I think it'd actually be beneficial? Now, to be perfectly clear, like, the number of votes we had for my organization is like 7. So we're not going to end up changing anything. But the premise is, they wanted to get their agenda out as quick as possible. And I get it. They're an organization. They have interests. They have people that work there. And a lot of their guys that work there, I can't say a lot, but there are a couple that work there, and they all work for the big boys, the big clubs in Florida. Well, don't you think they're going to do whatever they can to protect their interest? Like, the director of player development works for one of the biggest cash cows in Florida. Does that I just tell you all you need to know? And like, I didn't even realize I could have ran to enter the race to be the director of player development because his cycle was up. I would have gone in. I didn't know what I was getting into. And I would have put a challenge out. But like, this is how this would have worked. He would have guaranteed 1. Because if you basically, they say, okay, we have this nomination. Are there any other nominations? Yes or no? So somebody can come up and nominate you. And then you have to get a second vote. And then if you get the second vote, then what you have to do literally is you have 2 minutes to speak. This is how stupid this is. You have 2 minutes to speak after you've been nominated. And then after that 2 minutes, the other person would have 2 minutes to speak. And then once that's completed, then you vote. Well, okay, so let's say I actually went up there. Of course I'm going to lose because there's 6,000 votes on the table. These people don't know who I am, or maybe they do, I don't know. And this guy's been in office for at least 2 years. And he's had 2 years to get his ideas out, or whatever they are, if they even exist, and put those processes in place. And I'm coming up and I have a 2-minute conversation to try and say, hey, we need to change stuff. I didn't do it. I wish I did, but I didn't really know what was going on. So it was my first time at one of those, and it was shocking. And again, it was just nothing to do about the rules, nothing to do about the game, nothing to do about the players, what's happening in youth soccer. It was all just, hey, it's political. Hey, it's these rules we need to change from organizational perspective. These are the costs. And I'm going, you want to know why we suck? This is why. And then what's interesting is I started watching the FIFA Uncovered documentary, and it's the exact same stuff that I'm talking about. It's all a scam. Like, it's literally all a scam. And I'm going, we're so screwed in this country. Even FIFA probably screwed to begin with, but that's a separate conversation. And it's just like, I can't see, based on what I just witnessed with the FYSA AGM, that we're ever going to become an elite country for player development. It can't happen in the model that we have. You might get the 1%, maybe it maximizes to 2%, but overall there's just no way possible that could happen and consistently provide value to where players are progressing. There's no incentive, there's no desire to. FYSA isn't interested. I mean, they were super excited that they increased the membership by 13,000 players. That was their biggest ploy. Oh, we got 13,000 more players. We're now at 113,000 versus 100,000. Cool, great. Like, I'm glad you guys have that standpoint, but what about everything else? And like, again, talking about cost, they have a tournament called State Cup. It's $900 minimum a team, I believe. So like, that's not cheap. And if you lose one game, you're out. Talk about cost, that's expensive. So it's just ironic, bro, and it's not about the kids. It's just political bullshit. I'm going to say it again. And if we can't talk about the whole reason why we're here is kids playing football and youth development and the structure about it, how can we ever expect to be a country that's great at developing and exporting talent? Like, I just can't see that happening based on what I witnessed at the FYSA AGM. It's impossible. In fact, I had to leave the meeting because I was like, dude, I can't handle this anymore. Like, we should be talking about all the micro problems that we have and the macro problems, by the way. And we're just completely ignoring this, talking about these political stuff and these bylaws and all these things that are irrelevant to what kids need to be doing on a field, which is playing and training. And it's like, it's just mind-blowing to me, the fallacies of the program in general, from the state organization to U.S. soccer. And that stuff's not going to change, and we're going to continue to struggle until those things change. And it's not going to happen probably until after I die. But, you know, at least we have the conversation starting. Hope to continue it, and I'll see you in the next video.